In our project, we are focusing on the correlation between surviving kids per woman versus GDP per capita. According to Gapminder, these variables have a negative correlation between the number of surviving kids per woman and the country's GDP per capita. Our main focus is on how many children a woman has on average that survives until their 35th birthday. This is based on the total fertility rate and age-specific mortality. Gross domestic product, also known as GDP, refers to the final goods and services produced within borders of a country during a particular time period. In this case, our graphs will be referring to GDP per capita, which roughly measures the standard of living in a given country by calculating gross domestic product divided by the mid-year population. This bubble graph shows data from 1960 through 2017 of surviving kids per woman versus GDP per capita. Throughout the years, you can see a significant decrease in the number of kids people are having as GDP per capita continuously rises. We speculate that countries like Niger, who is having upwards of 6 kids, are having so many kids due to cultural differences. Another reason could be due to those countries having a lower GDP per capita, which could mean that more kids could be more helpful to earn money or do chores for the family.
We want to focus on two countries, the United States and China. As displayed on the graph, China's population and children lessened starting in the 70s. We believe that this could be because of the one-child policy implemented in 1979. Another reason that we believe that the one-child policy could have affected this is that the average number of kids that a Chinese woman had plateaued at around just under 2 kids starting in the early 90s up until today. You can see the spike in the surviving children in the 60s, then it starts to decrease after 1969. Similarly, in the US during the 60s, the amount of children people were having significantly declined. This could be due to the introduction of birth control during the 60s, causing women to not have to have children they didn't want. The number of children started to increase in the 80s and has continued to increase until 2017. Both of the trends for China and the United States both began with higher amount of surviving children that they ended with it. This next bubble graph shows the correlation between dead kids per woman and GDP per capita. We decided to use this data because it is opposite of the surviving children bubble graph. This graph shows a negative correlation between the number of dead kids per woman and GDP per capita. The number of dead kids is based on how many children a woman has on average that dies before their 35th birthday. It is based on the total fertility rate and age-specific mortality. This graph explicitly shows the more GDP per capita your country has, the less dead kids you will have. We speculate that this could be due to lower GDP countries not having access to the same amount or caliber healthcare that some higher GDP countries have.
This bubble graph shows the correlation between the dead kids per woman and all causes of deaths in children from 1 to 59 months. These causes include diarrheal deaths, HIV deaths, injury deaths, malaria deaths, measles deaths, and some others. This graph shows a linear correlation between the two variables shown in the horizontal line. As shown in the graph, the bigger the bubble, the larger the population in that country. As you can see, countries with a higher population have a significant number of more causes of death in children than countries with a lower population. In conclusion, the higher the GDP per capita of a country, the more kids people have. This could be caused by differences in culture or not having proper access to health services. We can compare two countries from this graph that have a significant change. Both China and the United States have a significant decrease in the number of kids they are having throughout the years. With that being said, there is also a significant decrease in the number of kids that have died over the years, especially in countries with a higher GDP per capita. Throughout this process, we discovered that countries with a higher population have a lot more causes of death in children. This means that some of the countries with a lower population are mostly dying from the same diseases. As you can see, GDP per capita directly correlates with the number of surviving kids that women have and also with the number of kids that they have that have died.